greetings, Cap fans, and welcome to another episode of the Captain America Comic Book Fans Podcast. This is episode 229, and I'm your host, Rick Verbanis. How you doing? I got a co-host. You know his name. It's Bob Lucius. Oh, Bob. Patriotism is supporting your country all the time, and your government when it deserves it.
All right. Who was that a quote by?
That's Mark Twain.
Was it? All right.
Yeah.
All right. Samuel Clemens.
Yeah. You ever heard that?
I think I have. I just
Yeah.
I didn't attribute it this time to Mark.
Mark's got a lot of quotes. That may not be one of his more famous quotes, but
Yeah.
I liked it. I thought it
Yeah.
was apropos for today's topic, Bob.
Yeah.
And why do you think it was apropos?
Well, because we're going to be talking about Captain America Patriot
That's right. We're
tonight.
covering the miniseries Captain America: The Patriot. We're doing a recap today, Bob. And for those
Recap.
out there who maybe are new to the show and they don't know what a recap is, that's when we go through and just kind of give our summaries of the issues as opposed to going panel by panel and acting it out. So you get a little break from hearing me do voices, and then we kind of go through the story. But Bob, I know this was on your bucket list.
It was. Yeah. It still is because I'm not sure we're going through with it. So
Well, we'll see how
I'm
it
a
goes.
suspicious individual. So
Yeah. Well, I'm going to give a little bit of a tease for next episode, right? So this is episode 229, episode 230. We got a guest that comes on the show. And we have writer and inker Karl Kesel coming on the show. I mean, he's legendary. He's prolific. He's had a long career, decades long. I think he started in the 80s as far as his comics career. So he's going to be coming on the show next episode, and he is the writer of The Patriot. So, yeah. Kudos to you, Bob, for getting Karl to come on the show.
yeah, well, I'm excited about that because not only did he write this, but I think he wrote, penciled, and inked Captain America, the news strip, the 1940s news strip. Was that 3 issues?
Yeah, it was
which
3
is
issues.
which is really a lot of fun to read as well. So, and based on at least this story, but also with the newspaper strip, he's got a deep knowledge of Captain America mythos. So I'm really looking forward to digging deep with him.
Yeah, that'd be cool. And I gotta say, you are one sneaky guy, because normally, I end up getting the guests on the show, um, and we have our division of labor when it comes to this show, right,
Right.
Bob?
Yeah.
Right,
Absolutely.
right.
Yeah.
I usually get the guests. I usually set the schedule. I
Mm-hmm.
usually, edit
Yep.
the podcast afterwards.
Do
I
it all.
do all
You
the marketing. I publish it. I do all that, and
the mopping and dusting in the studio.
yeah. And then
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Bob. What was your division of labor again?
Color commentary.
Color commentary. Got it. Got it.
Yeah.
Got it. All right. But apparently, if you have enough incentive,
That's
you go
always
ahead
it
and
is.
you book guests. I mean, like what? I
Yeah.
mean, that like you just did it before. You had David Morrell on the show. You booked
Yeah.
David Morrell
Yeah.
because why? You wanted to cover Captain America: The Chosen. You have been itching to cover Captain
I
America:
have.
The Patriot, and so you're like,
Yeah.
hey, Rick, what if I get Karl Kesel on the show?
Yeah.
Yeah,
What do you
sure, we'll
know?
we'll do The Patriot if you get Karl
Sure.
Kesel.
What do you know?
What
Yeah.
happens?
Yeah. Well, I learned this from my wife because she promises me things if I clean out the garage. It's all about motivation, my friend.
Well, you know what, Bob? What else are you motivated to? I mean, it would be great if you get motivated to, like, is there a John Burns story you want to cover?
There might be a couple more out there that I'm interested in, and you'll be
Yeah,
like, damn it.
only if
Yeah.
you get him on the show
Well,
is
if
what
I
I'll
get them
say.
on the show. All right. I'm working it.
Yeah. But anyway, we're excited that Carl's going to be on the show next episode because, as Bob pointed out, yeah, he has done several different Captain America stories, not least of which is the one we're covering today, Captain America: The Patriot. But before we get into the topic of today, Bob, how are you doing?
Hey, doing pretty good, Rick. I think we're all busy these days, but I had a great experience today, and I want to share it with you, share it with the listeners. I know I've already shared it in the Facebook group, but I had the opportunity to do. I do presentations all the time. I do lectures, presentations. I teach at the university. I'm always on the road doing presentations in communities about sustainability or water, any of these things. But today I got to do a presentation about Captain America.
That
Uh,
is so cool.
yeah, right. And I've been so looking forward to this. It was at a place called Special Populations in Cape Coral, Florida, and essentially it's a day center that the city has for adults who have a range of cognitive challenges. So some are low functioning, some are high functioning, but they have all kinds of activities, and they're always looking for people to come in and spend a little time with the folks that are there during the day, and maybe teach them a skill or a craft, or just spend some time talking to them about something, a hobby, or whatever. So I've had some of my staff go there and do some presentations about animals or insects, and they found out that we did this podcast. The guy who runs the center found out we did this podcast, and he invited me to come and do a talk about Captain America, which of
How
course I
cool is
jumped at.
that?
Right? Yeah. So I went and I did a presentation about why I love Captain America, and specifically why I love Steve Rogers, and just basically covered his career in Kirby and Simon, and in the context of how they created that character, and his Steve Rogers career, and getting frozen and awoken, and his key villains. Lots of fun stuff. But I also wrapped up with you remember the Captain's Network?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah, from the United States of Captain America. I talked about the Captain's Network, and I talked about how we can all be like Captain America in our own ways, in our families, in our communities. And I went through my top 10 tips for how to be more like Captain America. So I think it was a fun experience for the audience. They had lots of questions. They're really looking forward to the new movie coming out, and a lot of them were very, very well informed about all the Marvel movies.
Yeah.
But there were some pointed questions about why I wasn't doing a presentation about Superman, because there's some Superman fans in that group.
Ah, that's true.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's cool. I'm glad you had an opportunity to do that. And I think it's really sweet that you know, are giving your time to do that for other people like that.
Well, you know how it is. We got to spread that gospel. What would Cap do?
Exactly.
So,
You know, speaking of Superman, I think that's going to be one of my questions that I want to ask Karl Kesel next week because
mm-hmm.
Karl has a long time of being involved with Superman for DC, and you know, there's some, I don't know, there's some similarities between Superman and Steve Rogers, and I think you know, it'd be interesting to see, to get his take on that as someone who has written both characters and the similarities, and maybe if that was some of his appeal of working on the characters.
Yeah, interesting. I think that's a great that'd be a great line of questioning to pursue.
Oh, so Bob, uh, so we're doing this on a different night than we normally do. We're doing it later than we normally do, and thank you for your flexibility because I've been busy with work, and I came back from a work function that's a little, you know, far, kind of like a long drive for me, and I'm driving back, and I get text alerts when it comes to
Yeah, yeah,
auctions that
yeah.
are like you know, because I like, oh, there's some Captain America art that's coming up for auction, and I'll be like, yeah, I'm gonna follow that, right? So then you know, they know like, oh, well, this auction is coming up, and oh, your piece is coming up live, you know, for auction, and I'm driving home in the dark. It's raining, and I'm on the highway,
Yeah.
like you know, kind of like in the interstate, And I'm driving and I get this text alert and they're like, a piece that you're interested in is about to be auctioned. And I'm like, oh no. Because I'm like, I don't want to be driving like with my phone. That would be dangerous and foolish. So I actually pulled over
Mhm.
to the side of the interstate. I'm on
Nice.
the side as cars are zipping by, and
Yeah.
I'm pulling out my phone and I'm like, oh, here's a Ron Garney Captain America piece that's coming up, and
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, I want to bid on that, and I'm bidding on it, and I'm thinking like, it's kind of low, and I'm thinking,
Yeah.
lower than normally would go, and I'm like, I should be able to get this at a good deal, so I'm great, and then like, it's like 4, 3, 2, 1, boop, somebody else bid. And I'm like, son of a gun. And I'm like on the side of the highway and I'm like going back and forth for a few
Yeah.
minutes. You know what? It was Alberto.
Oh, of course it was. Yes, of
Yeah,
course it
I'm
was.
bidding against Alberto. I'm on the side of the
Yeah.
highway
Yeah.
in a dark, rainy night.
Yeah.
And I'm like, but I won it, so I won
Yeah.
it.
Oh, well, good for you. All
Yeah,
right.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
You didn't
So,
get the whole. Oh,
no, I actually was waiting.
yeah.
I was like, do I put my
What are you
hazards
doing?
on?
Is there
Like,
a problem? I'm bidding on a comic art.
yeah, I'm
Yeah.
going up against
Okay.
my
Okay,
art.
buddy.
I'm going up against my art nemesis.
All right. Get out of the car. Yeah. Yeah.
You've been drinking, obviously, sir.
Obviously, yeah.
Yeah,
That's the worst excuse I've ever heard. Yeah.
right. But anyway, yeah. So I won.
Excellent. Good for you.
Yeah.
Congratulations. Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah.
All right. Speaking of congratulations, let's wish a happy birthday. So if you're listening to this on the day the episode comes out, it is February 26th, and tomorrow, the 27th, would be Andy Kubert's birthday. Andy, part of the Kubert family royalty in comics. Joe being the dad, a famous artist who started an art school, and then the two brothers, Andy and Adam Kubert. And so Andy, if you may recall, was on Captain America Volume 3, which was written by Mark Waid, and he was the one who replaced Ron Garney on the series, and had a nice long run on that. So happy birthday to Andy Kubert.
Happy birthday, Andy.
All right, Bob, should we get to today's issue?
We probably should. Yeah.
All right. Well,
This
we're going to do a recap. When I say issue, I mean 4 issues. So we are doing the Patriot miniseries. This was a miniseries that came out in 2010, and it was an interesting, and we'll have to talk to Karl about this next episode. It was an interesting idea because at this point, the Patriot, which is Jeff Mace, had not really been around very long. Now, he's been retconned to being back in the 40s and 50s, but the character was introduced in 1976, and there was a few issues in the 70s that he was in. A big one was What If number 4. And you remember What If number 4, right?
I absolutely certainly did. We covered it. And what episode was that? That was
It
a
was
long time ago.
episode 124. So
Yeah.
if anybody wants to check out episode 124, we actually did go by panel, and it was the introduction of um, Jeff Mace as Captain America, and by Roy Thomas.
That was what a great issue too. That's one of those issues that once you've read it, you can't forget it. It's got so many threads woven into it.
Yeah, and as I said, he hadn't been in a lot of comics, right? So he did those few in the 70s. He was in the Captain America Annual 6 in 1982, and we do need to get around to covering that one day. And then he had an appearance in the De Mateus run in the mid 80s, so early 80s, in 1983. So he was in issues 284, 285, and I think that's when he passed. It was in
Yeah,
285.
and we covered
Um,
that. It was episode 120.
it was. Look at you.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. So if anyone wants to check out that, one shot story. That was with Cap versus the Porcupine. But Jeff Mace is in there, and he's an important part of the story.
Yeah.
And that was pretty much it. I mean,
Or you left.
there was
There's a there.
Annual 13.
Oh, that's a great one.
Yeah, there was Annual
Yeah.
13. It came out in '94, um, and then there was a Citizen Z story. Was that did Carl write that too?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't know.
No, I think I'm confusing that. Carl wrote a Captain America Citizen V #1, which came out in 1998. So
Mm,
that was different. So
okay.
confusing that one. But and then he made a brief appearance in the Ed Brubaker story, and then for the most part, he had just a couple appearances here and there. So Carl decided to like really take a deep dive into the character and to explore the retcon of the 1940s and 1950s Captain America. And I don't know, Bob, if you want to take the listeners and kind of give them a maybe a little brief history of what that entailed as far as the retcon Jeff Mace.
Well, we certainly don't want to uh, pay short shrift to the Patriot, right? Because the Patriot was a fixture of Timely's golden age lineup. I mean, he was in 57 different books from the time that he was introduced in, I think, around April 1941 through the last time that he appeared in comics, which was in mid 1946. So, I mean, not only did he appear in a few issues of Human Torch, but he had a long run of stories that appeared in Marvel Mystery Comics, all the way from July 1941, again through mid July 1946. Every issue there was a Patriot story. So he was a well known character, Jeff Mace, Patriot, with his sidekicks Mary Morgan and Jacob Casey. Who we'll run into again in this story. So when Roy Thomas plucked the Patriot out of the Golden Age and reintroduced him in Marvel Premiere 29 as a member of the Liberty Legion, along with Jack Frost and Blue Diamond and the Wizard and the Thin Man. He was pulling on really a long history for that character. And so as you said, we learned in What If #4 that Jeff Mace was the third Captain America. So from a retcon perspective, when we lost Steve Rogers in April 1945, when he and Bucky were blown off that drone that had been booby trapped by Zemo. Steve Rogers went into the ice and someone had to take his place. And as we learned in What If #4, William Naslund did that, the former Spirit of 76, which, by the way, was not a Golden Age character. That was one that was created by Roy Thomas. So he took over, and I think he stayed from a retcon perspective from around. Gosh, I can't remember what it was. It was. Hold on a second. If you go back and look at the Golden Age comics,
Mm-hmm.
it would be from about issue 49 through issue 58 of Captain America comics, and several issues of All Select and All Winners Squad and USA Comics would now be considered. That's William Naslund, the former Spirit of 76, in Captain America's uniform. But we know what happened. We know that William Naslund, as Cap, was killed by Adam 2 in that What If #4. And Jeff Mace, who was the Patriot at the time, stumbled upon the body, put on the uniform, picked up the shield, and joined the All Winners Squad to ultimately defeat Adam and save Jack Kennedy, who at that time was a congressional candidate for the 11th congressional district in Massachusetts. And so, from a retcon perspective, Jeff Mace is now held to have been the Captain America from issue 59 of Captain America Comics, all the way up to issue 74. And of course, a lot of Marvel Mystery Comics in there as well. And I think probably a handful of the All Select and All Winners Squad as well. So, looking back, we've got those three caps now that are accepted has been retconned. And this is all, certainly well before the William Burnside 1950s Cap, who didn't show up to 1953 in the Captain America comics. So for Karl Kesel to take the deep dive, as you suggest, with this miniseries, he really is pulling on a long mythos for the Patriot character that most people aren't familiar with. And certainly when this came out, I am dead sure most Cap readers, probably other than that brief appearance in Liberty Legion, had never heard of this guy.
Unless they were reading those De Mateus issues, right, where they they
Sure.
they go into that. But yeah, I mean, bottom line is Jeff Mace is an important part of the Captain America mythos. He's often overlooked, rarely talked about or referred to, but as you pointed out, and we're about to cover today, certainly an important character when it comes to overall the Captain America legacy.
Yes. But this series also serves another useful purpose in that it ties up a loose end in the Captain America mythos. And I've talked about this before when we've talked about
Do
the
we want to give it away?
I don't know. Yeah, maybe not. We could talk about that at the end, but certainly there's other characters that are brought into this story that if you're a Golden Age reader, you'll be familiar with. But if you're a modern reader, maybe not so much.
Yep. All right. So let's get into the release date. So this issue one of this had a release date of September 15th, 2010. And the cover date was November. And just to let you know, the issue two was released 2 weeks later. So it was one of those ones where they wanted to release the first two issues at the very close to each other, um, to get people kind of a momentum because I don't know. Some people know this. So I used to own a comic book store, and the way it works is you have to place your order generally 2 months before the issues come out, right? So you'll get a catalog, and the comic readers, they can also purchase the catalog, right? But you go through the catalog and you go, okay, here are some things that you may want to order, for 2 months from now, and you have to kind of base it on how many people are going to purchase Captain America the Patriot, right? And so in your mind, you're like, all right, well, this is how many people in my store who read Captain America. What percentage do we think would actually pick up the Patriot miniseries? 20%? I don't know, right? So it's a number one, so why not? We'll do 20%. Now, there's always a drop off from number one to number two. So then you start thinking to yourself, okay, well, I can expect probably a 25% drop off. Okay, so then I'm going to do 25% off of that, right? So then you drop that number down. So you're a little bit of a pickle because they're soliciting issues one and two in the same one. And you don't have any kind of history yet. So you have to place an order for both. So it's kind of like Marvel or other publishers, they do this hoping that someone's going to read number one and number two and then be hooked, right? Kind of like when you're watching Disney Plus and they're like, we're kicking off a new series and we're going to release episodes one and two on the same night. Because they know one's a little slower because, it has to build up something, but then maybe it ends with something and then number two is a little bit more exciting, whatever. So it's an interesting thing. So the solicitation, Bob, for issues one and two are exactly the same. Would you like to hear it?
I do.
What does it take to be the living symbol of America, the sentinel of liberty, the super soldier of World War II? What does it take to be Captain America? 1941. Captain America puts on his mask and shield for the first time and instantly inspires the entire nation, including Jeff Mace, a rough and tumble reporter who quickly dons his own star spangled suit and calls himself the Patriot. It's a decision that will take him from stopping stateside saboteurs to headlining the home front heroes known as the Liberty Legion. to the most expected offer of all. When the Sentinel of Liberty dies and Jeff Mace is asked to be the next Captain America. This is the story of a man who was a great patriot and his determination to be something more. His attempt to be not just a hero, but a symbol. His struggle to show how he has what it takes to be Captain America.
Well, I would have ordered it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that
You
sounds
would have
amazing.
you would have ordered number one and two?
Oh, I would have for sure.
All right. There you
Yeah.
go. All right, Bob, you want to take us through the cover of Patriot number one?
Yeah, so it's just it's a great cover. It's a Mitch Breitweiser cover, right? But it
Yep.
has a little bit, it's reminiscent of an Alex Ross cover because it's got a metallic sheen to the Patriots uniform that reminds me a bit of that limited edition Bucky as Captain America cover. But so what we have here is we have a wall in the background, and on that wall we see the image of Captain America. It's not a full image, but we do see the A on the head, and we see the star and the stripes on the torso, and it's almost like a shadow. Or maybe like a two-tone, graffiti on the wall. But before the wall, in front of the wall, we see this character that you've just been discussing, and I have, the Patriot. And it is Jeff Mace in his full Patriot attire as the hero. And if you haven't seen that uniform or not familiar with it, please Google it or check it out. But I'll try to describe it for you. It's essentially a blue and red uniform, and he's got red leggings, he's got red gauntlets, red boots, but the rest of his uniform, the trunks and the shirt, long sleeve shirt, is blue, and on the chest is a golden eagle, and then he's got a red cowl with a single gold chevron on his forehead, and some sort of fin on the top of his cowl. It looks a bit like Yondu. And this is the Patriot that we're going to learn about in this story.
Yes, and the creators for this series, we mentioned Karl Kesel before as the writer, and you mentioned Mitch Breitweiser as the cover artist, but his wife is the colorist, Elizabeth Breitweiser. So Mitch is doing the pencils and inks, his wife is doing the colors, and then we have letterer Jared Fletcher and the editor Tom Brevoort. And it's interesting, Bob. I'm sensing a theme here. These two bucket list stories that we're finally getting to here on the podcast. We did Patriot, and we did a recap not too long ago of The Chosen, which was written by David Morrell. Both of these, are the art's by Breitweiser.
It is, yeah. And did we do 0 Point as well? What do
Yeah,
you
we did that.
know?
We did that last year.
Yeah,
Yeah,
strange. So yes, all Breitweiser art.
yeah,
I'm a big fan of his art. It's gritty, it's realistic, and it's very very detailed. So
yeah.
yeah, I do love his stuff.
It has a little bit of a Lee Weeks look to it,
It,
in
it
my
does.
opinion. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. It is. It is. And I think it fits this story very well. All right, Bob. We are going to go back and forth as far as recapping issues. You got issue one, so why don't you give us a recap?
All right. Well, these issues are a little long, so bear with me. I'll try to get to it relatively quickly. But this issue, the first issue, with the title "Born on the 4th of July," it opens. The story opens in July 1941. So we're not too far into Steve Rogers' career as Captain America, and in fact, on the first splash page, that's who we see. We see Steve Rogers as Captain America, and the story tells us it's a moonless night at the Brooklyn shipyard in New York City, and we see a flurry of action, and we see Captain America really going to town on a bunch of saboteurs that were down at the docks, probably trying to undermine the wartime supply effort as part of the Lend-Lease program, supporting our allies, and particularly Britain. And so Cap is down there and he's making short work of these saboteurs. But we see one of the saboteurs, escape and start running away. And in the shadows, out from the shadows, I should say, steps forward this reporter. And this is when we get introduced to Jeff Mace. And essentially, he clocks that saboteur. And Captain America approaches Jeff Mace and thanks him for his help. And says, "Well, I'm just a reporter." And Cap responds, "I know you would have done the right thing, basically, even if I wasn't here." And he goes on to say, "We're going to need a lot more people like you, and you're not just a citizen doing the right thing; you're a patriot." And this is sort of what's the word I'm looking for, Rick? Not prescient, but we're getting a glimpse of maybe what's going to unfold in this story. And so then we move to really the second scene in this issue, and it's at the offices of the Daily Bugle. But it's not J. Jonah Jameson who is the editor at this time. It is a guy by the name of Mr. Goodman, which obviously is a call out to Martin Goodman, the owner and original editor of Timely Comics, where these characters were originally established. So Mace is getting basically chewed out because not only did he intervene in this, but he wrote a story about it that basically indicated that he was a little too close to the action. And the editor, Mr. Goodman, is a little upset. He wants his reporters out there reporting the news, but he doesn't want his reporters becoming part of the news. So he basically cautions Mace to not get too involved. But Mace feels passionate, right? Because like Steve Rogers, Jeff Mace has also been declared 4F. And he says it's because of his flat feet or his webbed feet or something like that. So the way he sees it, being a reporter and catching these spies and saboteurs and preventing them from impacting the war effort is one of the things that he can do to do his part for America. After he gets done getting chewed out by the editor, old Jeff Mace moves into the reporter bullpen, and that's where we get to meet two of his closest friends. We get to meet Mary Morgan and another guy by the name of Jake Casey. And Jake is the newspaper photographer, and Mary is another reporter that works there. And as I said, both of these characters were originally introduced in Human Torch #4, along with Jeff Mace in his first appearance as the Patriot. So these really are a deep dive into what we saw in the Golden Age, but we get a lot more detail about these characters. So we learn that, for example, Mary Morgan she's wealthy. She comes from a very rich family. Her father owns a shoe factory, and they just got a contract to make boots for the U.S. Army. But we also hear that there is going to be an attempt to break up some union workers that are striking for more safety at the factory, and that somebody has hired a bunch of strikebuster goons to come in and wreak havoc that night. And Jeff Mace says, "Boy, I'd like to get in and maybe help deal with that situation." And Mary cautions him and says, "Why don't you just leave it to Captain America or someone else wearing a mask?" And Mace gets this look on his face like he has an idea, and he asks her, "Hey, do you still have those connections in the theater district? Those people that make costumes?" So we're left, and as we turn,
all right, I'm gonna stop you right here.
Yeah. All right.
You are leaving out a very key, vital piece
You do? You
of
think
information for our listeners.
All right.
In this particular, what does Mary Morgan look like?
Well, she's a very attractive young woman, Rick, with dark hair and long legs and an hourglass figure. Is that what you're looking for?
What kind of dress would you say she's wearing?
Oh my goodness! Well, hold on.
Because when I hear a female reporter, I'm thinking business, right? She's got on pants and a collared shirt and buttoned up, and a pencil behind her ear, and but I don't think she's wearing that.
Well, no, I mean it's it's ankle length dress, right? But her arms are showing, and she is displaying her ample bosoms, with a prodigious cleavage. but she's a well put together woman. She's wearing jewelry, her hair is perfect, and she's got a great smile, and she's smiling a lot at Jeff Mace. So
She sure is.
we get an early indication that then I don't know, maybe there's a little spark there between
Yeah, she's
them.
sitting on his desk.
Yeah, leaning in,
Yeah.
so definitely there might be a little something here. Certainly they're close friends, maybe more.
All right.
So we wrap up the scene in the bullpen, and then they turn the page, and the next page, and I love the way this series does this, because we get exposed to a lot of action scenes, and then there's almost like a newspaper script that has been torn out of the newspaper and pasted on these scenes, and so we see the Patriot at the shoe factory, really laying into these goons who were sent to break up the strike. And this one, he's standing on a car, and he's punching a guy, and there's a lot of action going on. But we see the little excerpts of the newspaper story that appeared the next day in the newspaper about this event, and it's his first foray into being the Patriot. So really, just an impressive sort of first introduction to this character. But the very next day, he shows up at the office. And when he shows up at the office, they notice that he's all bruised and he's got all these cuts on his face covered with bandages. So they think, well, you had a rough night. And he's like, oh, yeah, it was just another bar I won't get back to. But well, we know that Jeff Mace got those at that event. And so, Mary Morgan certainly knows that something's amiss, because she asks him straight up, was this a one-time thing, or do you plan on doing this again? And we get the answer that, yeah, this is probably going to be something we see a lot more of. And then over the course of several more pages, we get, again, more stories, same format, the action panels with the overlay of the newspaper script, tank factory back on track, curtains for the Bund killer, Japan bombs Hawaii. Then we get the big news, right? Because the months are going by, and we finally get to December 1941, and we get the big newspaper that shows us that Japan is in the war, and things have changed at that point. Now we are at war in the United States, and Mason Morgan's friend Jacob Casey, he enlists in the Navy and ships out, and it's just the two of them at this point. But Jeff is still doing his thing. He's still the Patriot, and he's still fighting. And then we get introduced finally.
Now, I want to point out something, because the friend is going off to the Navy, right?
That's right.
But Jeff is not there to really say farewell to him, and it's alluded because he was 4F, and he had a problem with his feet, whether flat feet, web feet, whatever. He
Right.
mentions both. Um, but you get the impression like he's a little disappointed that he can't go. And so that's part of what is, motivating him to be the Patriot, locally, because he can't go overseas to fight the enemy. But so I think that was a scene that was kind of relevant to all this.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. I mean, that is brought up a number of times, right? That he has been considered, just like Steve Rogers, unfit for service for medical reasons. And I don't know if you know this, Rick, but there were like 23 different condition categories for selective service or for the draft during World War II. There were 23 of them, and 4F being one, 1A meaning you're available to serve, but there was a whole range of them. And eventually that system was ended, by the way, in 1949. And so they've shortened that dramatically. But in any case, as we continue through the story to now, it's June, right? June of 1942, we get introduced at last to the Liberty Legion. So as you remember, that Liberty Legion was introduced in Marvel Premiere 29, I think in April 1976. But here we see the formation of that team, and it's the same team with the Whizzer and the Thin Man and Jack Frost and Blue Diamond and Madeline Joyce, Miss America, and the Red Raven. So Patriot becomes part of this team. And unlike like the invaders who were fighting overseas in the theater of war, the Liberty Legion fought at home on the war front to protect the United States against spies and saboteurs. So we see for a number of pages them working together. And again, lots of these stories popping up about their adventures. They've got, and a lot of these, are actually reflective, not entirely, the high fidelity to some of the stories we might have seen in the Golden Age, but we see elements pulled from some of those Golden Age adventures of the All Winners Squad or All Select Squad.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of a cool part of this story because that happens several times throughout the four issues. Just the kind of retconning and going back to those Captain America Golden Age stories and all winners, Golden Age, whatever. It's a good callback, and he's Karl's doing a great job of weaving it in.
He really is. Yeah, I mean, that's what I mean. He is a lover of the mythos because it's clear that he was either very familiar with it before he started this effort, or he really steeped himself in the lore as he crafted this story. So, the Liberty Legion's working together. And then one night, Jeff Mace, still in his Patriot costume, returns home and he finds Mary Morgan sitting on his couch. And
Not just sitting on the couch. It
they,
is
she's,
she's flirting
she
and
is.
being a little forward in how she's kind of presenting herself to him.
You're right. She is reclining somewhat seductively on his furniture for sure, and they have a discussion. So apparently, Liberty Legion, including Jeff, just rescued her, Mary Morgan, the reporter, from a bunch of Nazis that were experimenting on her, and so she shows up at his apartment and she's wearing a costume that is similar to his own, except it's a mini skirt essentially, with the same golden eagle on her chest. And apparently these experiments the Nazis had performed on her until she was rescued had given her some superpowers. So she's got enhanced hearing and she has what is she refers to as radar vision. And she's kind of hoping that, and since she's called herself Miss Patriot, that Jeff is going to take her on as a partner. Because up to this point, he's part of the Liberty Legion. He doesn't really have a sidekick. And so she's hoping maybe she can be that sidekick. And it's definitely clear that she wants to be more than just a sidekick, that she is romantically interested in Jeff, but he's not interested in her, at least not in that way. They're friends, but that's the extent of it for him. So she leaves very disappointed. And of course, he feels bad. Turn the page, and we are at really the closing days of World War II. And the Liberty Legion has just foiled a major Japanese attack on San Francisco. But word on the street is things are slowing down in Europe, and they're going to do one final push. And there's talk about folding the Liberty Legion into the invaders to finish off the Nazis and the Japanese imperial forces. And Jeff's pretty excited about this, except Miss America tells him that, well, it's just going to be her and the Wizard, basically, because Jeff Mace is a little too similar as the Patriot to Captain America. The aesthetics very similar, and Captain America already has a partner, so he's going to get stuck staying in the homeland, still fighting crime and saboteurs and spies while the rest of them go off and serve overseas. So he's a little upset about this, and I get that because he still feels very the whole 4F thing and the fact that he wasn't allowed to enlist in the army and serve overseas, that still grates against him, I think. And he's still looking for a way to make a big difference in the war effort. And he's actively being prevented from doing so here. As that's going down, we jump ahead in time. And now it's July 1946. And we see Jeff Mace wearing an overcoat over his costume of some sort, and he's sitting at a table, and there's a man and a woman essentially interrogating him, wanting to know what he was doing in Boston at the time of the attack on congressional candidate Jack Kennedy. And we realize that what we're seeing here is they're talking about the events that transpired in What If number 4. And we can surmise that, this is occurring after that happened. and they want to know what happened to William Naslund. How did he die? And we know that. We know how he died from What Up Number 4, but these FBI agents don't have that information. And so they're interrogating him, trying to figure out how this went down. And we hear a recap, basically,
And
of
if anybody's interested in the recap, just go to episode 124. You'll get the whole thing. So we could skip that part.
yeah. So he gives them the whole, Jeff explains how it went down. And they basically believe him at this point, and they say, "Well, look, we're at the point now," and he didn't know that there had been two Captain Americas at this point. He didn't know about Steve Rogers, and he didn't know that Steve Rogers had been lost, and that William Naslund wasn't the original. But they explain this to him, and then they say to him that we would like you to now take up and be the third Captain America. And Mace hesitates for a little bit, but then he steels himself, takes off the overcoat, and he's wearing the Captain America uniform. So now we can surmise this has happened just after the events of What If Number 4. He puts on the cowl, picks up the shield, and says basically he will do it. He will take on the mantle and be the best Captain America that he can be.
And he says, that would be my honor.
Indeed.
And that's how we end issue 1. Nice recap. Right. Nice recap, Bob. All right. So getting into number 2, same creative team. And as I mentioned before, this came out just a couple weeks later in late September of 2010. So on the cover of this one, it has some of the reminiscent feeling of the first one, where it's kind of like a looking up at the character, and there's some shadows. So same kind of element there. And essentially, it is a Captain America holding in his arms a Captain America. And it's very intriguing. And then you see in the background the All Winners squad, including uh, or the invaders, including Namor and Human Torch and Bucky and Whizzer and um, Miss Miss Marvel, Miss America.
Miss America. Yes.
Yeah, Miss America. So it's an intriguing cover because again, Captain America holding a fallen Captain America, and again, Mitch Breitweiser on the cover. So we open up and it's September of 1946, and we have Miss Patriot, as Bob mentioned before. She now has super hearing, and she overhears a pair of crooks who are plotting to sell some stolen penicillin on the black market. And so she bursts in and she captures them over the course of a couple of pages during a gunfight. But when one of the hoods asks her where the Patriot is, she kind of she's kind of taken aback a little bit. And at this point, we cut to a double page uh, spread that you open up to, and there's a big, let's say 2/3 uh, horizontally splash page with some panels on the right hand side, and it's the All Winners taking on the some Russian superpowered agents. And so at this point, Jeff Mace is, who was the former Patriot, is now Captain America. And the All Winners squad has, as I mentioned from the cover, you've got Namor, the Submariner. You've got Human Torch and his younger partner Toro. You have Bucky, as well as Whizzer and Miss America. So you see them, here battling their Russian counterparts, and they're trying to rescue a physicist by the name Klaus, and I'm just going to say Fuchs.
Sounds about right.
It's Fuchs.
No, it's
That's
Fuchs.
true.
It's Fuchs for sure.
Okay, I was just
Interesting, Rick. Do you know that there's a couple of characters here that were created by Karl Kesel for the story. Obviously, not the Red Guardian, but one, the Iron Comrade. But the other one that you see fighting mostly against Miss America is the Night Witch.
Yeah.
Uh, and she turns out to be Alexandra Lukin. One of the Daughters of Liberty that we see a lot of in the Ta-Nehisi Coates
Mm-hmm.
volume. So
Well, again, another retcon.
yeah,
Yeah, when we get to that. Uh, Interestingly enough, the Red Guardian, which you mentioned, so he's fighting Captain America, but he's also not only physically fighting him, he's verbally sparring with him as well. And at some point, he he starts to suggest that Cap's off his game. Cap can throw his shield, and he actually can catch the shield. And then he mentions something about when they had fought previously. And at this point, Bucky kind of intercedes, right? He kind of comes in and kicks the Red Guardian to kind of stop Cap from talking too much. The Wizard also carries Fuchs to safety, and but the Russian heroes end up escaping through a portal opened by the aforementioned Night Witch. Now, after the battle, Cap learns that the whole attack was actually just a setup. And Fuchs was a Soviet spy. He was passing atomic secrets to his masters. And then the red team was sent to kidnap him. And for the people listening, I just did air quotes. But Bucky also reveals that the suspicious Red Guardian was actually trying to trick Jeff into giving away that he's not the original Captain America because they never had that previous fight that the Red Guardian was mentioning. And Namor points out that it should be obvious because Jeff cannot measure up to Steve Rogers in any way as Captain America.
he's pretty
And
harsh in his criticisms of
yeah,
Mace.
I would say more than criticism. I would say contempt.
Yeah,
You know, and so this is not lost on Jeff, of course. And then they go off into the Namor's Atlantic submarine type of vessel, right? So, but Jeff, he's actually kind of annoyed. He's tired of being kept in the dark, so he thinks he could do a better job if he knew more of what was going on in his predecessor's history. Now, um, they make it back, and this is a couple days later. They make it back to New York, and there's a radio program that's welcoming back the team, the All Winners squad, and they mentioned that coming out is also Captain America, which um, we have here Mary, who is surprised by this, and I she drops her martini glass, Bob. Oh no.
yeah. Well, she's surprised because the radio is saying that there seems to be a budding romance between Captain America and Miss America, who is also with the All Winners Squad.
So back in New York, Jeff contacts FBI agent Betsy Ross, who fills him in on the Super Soldier Project and the origin of the first Captain America, expressing confidence that Jeff can do anything he puts his mind to, which looks like they're about to have maybe a little bit of an intimate moment. They're looking longingly in each other's eyes and they're getting close, but then all of a sudden, Human Torch shows up and he says, "Oh, hey, Cap, you got a guest here. It's Miss Patriot, aka Mary Morgan." And so she comes in and she basically says that she recognized Jeff by his voice when he spoke on the radio as Captain America. And then she talks with him a little bit to learn uh, is he really romantically involved with Miss America? And she casually mentions that they would make a great team if there ever is a need for a new Bucky. Now, Jeff, who is I guess still kind of rattled from all the danger that's been involved, he really recoils at the suggestion, right? He gets upset. He kind of gets yells at Mary, and then Mary gets upset, so she leaves. And because she was flirting with him, but I think Jeff just keeps he has these blinders on when it comes to Mary flirting with
He
him,
sure
like
does. Yeah.
and so he kind of misinterprets it as the fact that she's kind of scheming, and so um, But she leaves, but then it was revealed that the whole reason that she was there was to tell Jeff that, remember the old pal Jack Casey, the photographer. Well, he died. In fact, he committed suicide because he was discharged from the service with a blue ticket. And um, yeah, there is some implying there that there could have been a reason that was not um, respected. Let's just say.
Right. Yeah.
So now at this point, Jeff's like, "Well, I've got to go to the funeral, and I want to go as Captain America." But his colleagues tell him, "No, you can't do that because if he shows up in that it'll just ruin Captain America's reputation." And so he decides that he's going to go anyway, but he does kind of listen. So instead of going as Captain America, he goes as the Patriot, and then he gives a brief eulogy. Now, the public backlash pretty much ends the career of the Patriot. And I guess you could say it also ends the career of Miss Patriot. And in a ceremony, Jeff has the Human Torch incinerate the Patriot costume. And when Namor kind of just he sneers at saying that Jeff's sacrifice changed nothing. Jeff punches him, and in the moments and then in the months that follow, Captain America go on to just battle various threats to liberty and justice. And it says February 1947, August 1947, December 1947, April 1948. And essentially, in these few panels on the page, it's taking us through those golden age Captain America comics. And so we see some of the stories that take place in those Captain America issues that are being kind of represented here, and in a way is just saying like, yep, those were all Jeff Mace Captain America. That was, in case you were curious, because Steve Rogers was supposed to be frozen. No, that was Jeff Mace. So I liked how that was kind of woven into this story.
A lot of great, like a lot of great callbacks to some of the original stories, and again, the art is killing it. Breitweiser's killing it in these panels because he's lifted stuff but reimagined it.
So then we go on to the new headquarters for the All Winners, and it's a newly constructed Baxter building. Now, for some of you out there, you're like, "Oh, the Baxter building." Well, that's the Fantastic Four's headquarters. Yeah. Well, before the Fantastic Four moved in, it was the All Winners Squad headquarters. And so at this site, they actually celebrate Jeff's birthday, which, by the way, Mary, with her super hearing, overhears from her office at the Daily Bugle. And then that night, Cap and Bucky, they're out there on a rainy night on the trail of jewel thieves. And then when Buck and Cap get separated, Bucky's shot down. And we get to the last page, and we see Bucky is just lying in a puddle, and he's bleeding, and Cap goes racing over to him, and he holds him, and as he's cradling his wounded friend in his arms, he detects the scent of lavender, which we heard earlier in this issue was also Miss Patriot's favorite perfume. And that ends the second issue.
Oh my goodness, this is really heating up, Rick. Uh, my goodness, and we know again, Captain America Comics issue number 66 is when Bucky on the cover. Bucky is shot in the stomach by an assailant right next to Cap, and it takes Bucky out of commission for a while. So again, that deep dive into the golden age timely stories are being replayed out for the benefit of modern readers.
Yep.
All
All
right.
right. You want me to
Oh,
read the solicitation for number 3?
yes, please.
Okay. Bucky shot, near dead. Cap relentlessly pursues Gunman. In a story that changes his life forever, Jeff Mace must prove he's not just worthy of being Captain America, but worthy of being Bucky's partner as well. Making matters worse, he thinks he knows who pulled the trigger, but hopes with all his heart he's wrong. Guest starring the Submariner, Original Human Torch, and other All Winter Squad members, plus the dazzling debut of Golden Girl. After this, nothing will ever be the same for Captain America.
All right. So we get to issue 3. Fantastic cover, again by Mitch Breitweiser. And we see in the moment that Bucky is shot, and he's in the foreground, and it looks like the bullets going in and out of him, because we actually see the blood spray, and it's a rainy night. The street is wet, and in the background we see Captain America, and he's shocked, right? I mean, this is happening right in front of him. So, I mean, if you saw this cover on a newsstand, I don't know how you could not have been pulled into this story.
Yeah, no, and it's interesting what you were saying before about yeah, it's just it goes back to which Captain America was it? Captain America.
Captain America Comics number 66, April
Yeah,
1948, I think.
yep. And Bob, this is yet one other reason why I personally don't collect Golden Age Captain America.
Mm.
Uh, because I would hate to spend a lot of money on a Golden Age comic in nice condition, and then someone says, that's not Steve Rogers. That's Jeff Mace. That's not Bucky Barnes.
Yeah.
And I'd be like, but I got this really nice comic from
Yeah.
1948. Yeah, well,
Yeah.
sorry.
Yeah. It's worthless now.
Yeah.
I hadn't thought about that, but now it's ruined for me.
Sorry. Hey, it's just me personally. Me personally. If you want a Jeff Mace Captain America comic book, then go for it.
Right. Thank you. Yeah. Oh, goodness. Well, all right. So here we are, issue number 3, and the title is Truth and Justice. And this first splash page is amazing, because
Okay.
we've got Bucky, whose real name is Fred Davis Jr., and he's been shot, and he's laying on an operating table, and we don't see him because we've got Fred Davis's perspective. He's looking up and at the surgeons and the nurse, and they're getting ready to operate on him. And there's blood on their gloves already. So this is going to be a messy operation. And then above and behind on an observation platform, we see Captain America just leaning forward, his hands on the railing. You can tell he is distraught. And the nurse's expression is she's bug-eyed, right? Because this is Bucky on the operating table. So this is a dire situation, and you can feel it coming through in this splash page.
I love how you did it, but yeah, I didn't really think of before that it was from Bucky's perspective, but it definitely is.
So over the next several pages, we've got the All Winners Squad and Betsy Ross, and they're saying, okay, it's okay, Jeff, he's going to be fine. They're working on him. The thing we got to go do now is we got to go find out who shot him, right? And he gets angry, right? Because he's feeling responsible. And he says, no, I'm going to do this myself. You got to give me 24 hours to track down this person. If I can't do it in 24 hours, then I'll accept your help. But I got to do this, because in his mind, he thinks it's Mary Morgan, right? He thinks it's Miss Patriot because she wanted Bucky's job. He smelled lavender. All these things seem to point to his old friend Mary Morgan, who maybe took that shot. And so he ends up going to Mary Morgan's apartment, and she's a little shocked and surprised to see him. She's got this enhanced hearing, but she's also soundproofed her apartment. And so maybe she didn't hear him coming until he broke in. And she pulls out a gun, and he stops her just in time from shooting him. And he has some serious words with her, right? He wants to know where she's been, what she's been doing. And when she guesses what has happened, she is shocked, right? That not only has Bucky been shot and maybe he'll die, but that Jeff thinks that she was responsible in some way. And so she as he's questioning her and basically accusing her, she heads out on her balcony. And when she heads out on the balcony, she overhears a conversation going on across town with her enhanced hearing, and it's taking place at a saloon. And it's somebody bragging about the fact that his boss was the one that shot Bucky. So she tells this to Jeff, and Jeff says, all right, I'm going to go check this out. But he's still not fully convinced. But he takes off to go find whoever this person is. And while he leaves, she basically packs her bags, locks her apartment, gets in a cab, and leaves. And in the comics, in the Golden Age, she had a very short career, and it ended. And we never heard from her again until much, much later when she showed up at a retirement home called Valhalla Villas in Miami, a retirement home for superheroes that she ran. And so this was the last time that we would see Mary Morgan in the Golden Age, and here as well in the Patriot. So Jeff Mace as Captain America heads down to the saloon, and he starts basically kicking some right? He's beating up everybody in the place because he wants to know who was responsible for shooting Bucky, and he's nailing everybody. And he sees somebody run off. And it's very reminiscent of that first issue where there's one guy that survives the dust up and is running off, and Jeff goes chasing him. And there's several pages of running through the city, chasing this guy. There's fights going on. Jeff is taking no prisoners. And he finally gets to a warehouse, and there's someone with a gun, and bullets ring out, and he just barely manages to dodge the bullets. And who is it but a woman named Lavender? I think her name's Lenora Moore. And again, from the cover of Captain America 66, Lavender was a very important character in that story. And in fact, she was the one that shot Bucky. So, and Miss Lavender, she also wears lavender perfume. So she's a very angry woman, and she's very upset at masked superheroes that are running around breaking up her black market businesses, right? So she starts, trying to, get Cap, shoot at Cap, and he's dodging, and he's getting upset, and he finally manages to basically knock the gun out of her hand, and she's still not shutting up, right? She's still like complaining about, shooting Bucky and doing this, and she's not regretting it whatsoever. And he's mad, and he gets ready to like throw a punch at her simply to shut her up. But somebody steps in and grabs his arm. And who is it? But a new hero we haven't seen before, Rick. And it's a young woman, blonde, and she's got a yellow dress with a green cape and a green cowl and wings on the cowl, no less. And she identifies herself as Golden Girl, and Jeff recognizes her right away as Betsy Ross. And sure enough, in Captain America Comics 66, after Bucky gets shot, who becomes his new partner? But Golden Girl. And so here we see Golden Girl, this introduction sort of being reframed in the context of this story. So they're, talking and of course distracted, and Lavender manages to find her gun, and she reaches and she shoots, and Golden Girl jumps in front of Captain America, and the bullet ricochets off her cape. And she explains to him that, in fact, that was the cape that was worn by the Spirit of 76 before he became Captain America as William Naslund. And she simply dyed it green to match her uniform. So that's one of her superpowers, is this bulletproof cape. So, Lavender's still trying to pin them down, taking advantage of this distraction. And Betsy Ross basically silences her by hitting her across the face with a 2x4. End scene. So they talk this over, Betsy Ross, Golden Girl, and Jeff Mace, Captain America, and decide that, Bucky's going to be in the hospital for a while. I need a new partner. Maybe we could pair up and be partners. You could be my new sidekick. And Cap goes to Bucky's bedside and to tell him that this is what's happened. And again, this is what happened in Captain America Comics number 66, that while you heal, Golden Girl's going to be my partner until you get back on your feet. And in fact, in the comics, he never really got back on his feet. We only saw him in one more story in the Golden Age Captain America Comics. And that is when Cap went to the hospital upon his discharge. So we see a bunch more stories introducing in the newspapers Golden Girl and Captain America as partners, and Golden Girl then joins the All Winners squad as well for a short time, but they decide to step away from the team and just fight crime by themselves. And so Jeff resigns from the All Winners squad and they break out on their own. In the last scene of this book, we see Jeff Mace in his civilian attire and Betsy Ross in her civilian attire, and he's walking her home. And they get to the apartment and they're looking forward to this new partnership, but he leans in for that kiss, similar to what Mary Morgan used to do to him. And basically, Betsy Ross says, let's just keep this on the professional side. And he's a little
Wah,
disappointed. Yeah,
wah.
right. He's a little disappointed, but she goes upstairs to her apartment, and who's sitting there but that FBI agent that had originally interviewed Jeff Mace after the what if,
Skinner.
yeah, Skinner, right? And it turns out that this had been the plan all along, that they felt that Jeff Mace was a national security risk as Captain America, and they wanted him out of the all winners squad. And the best way to do that was to get him to resign and to have Golden Girl basically surveil him. So, as his partner, she would really just be looking out for what he's doing and reporting it back to the FBI. And you could tell she's a little upset by this. She feels conflicted, right? And
Mm-hmm.
then the last splash page of this issue, we see her looking out her window and we see Jeff Mace walking away, a little upset. And she is clearly torn about this new mandate put upon her. It's not what she wants, and it's not what she wants of this relationship. We can surmise.
All right, Bob, we're moving quickly. We're going to get to the finale of this story in issue 4 of Captain America the Patriot. And this is something that was same creative team, and it had a release date of October 27th, 2010, and cover date of December 2010. Bob, you want me to read the solicitation?
I would be hurt if you didn't.
All right. The early 1950s, the age of McCarthyism and the Cold War. Jeff Mace finally feels comfortable as Captain America and loves working with his new partner, Golden Girl. But he notices that they are called to on only to deal with common criminals, not world threats. Can it be that the American government doesn't trust Captain America? As the world changes around him and allies become enemies, Jeff Mace learns the full responsibilities of being Captain America and the true meaning of being a patriot.
That sounds good.
All right, so we kick it off, and it's June 30th, 1950. So we've skipped ahead a little bit, and Jeff Mace, otherwise known as Captain America, is being questioned by the FBI agent Skinner as to his background and his early life. And it turns out a few months earlier, Cap and his psychic Golden Girl, Betsy Ross, they catch a thief who is basically stealing drugs. And meeting on the roof afterwards, Cap expresses second thoughts about his decision to leave the All Winter Squad to battle street crime in New York. And he mainly wonders why he hasn't been asked to take on organized crime nationally. And so Betsy informs him that essentially she's going to be giving up the Golden Girl identity and is she's being reassigned by the FBI. So at this point, like right before she reveals this, like he goes in and he gives her a kiss, and that's when she breaks the story. She's like, "Yep, I'm being reassigned." And so, um, yeah, he's a little upset, and he's like, "Well, when do we get to say goodbye?" And she's like, "We just did." He's been reassigned by the FBI to a new bureau liaison, Fred Davis, which, as you may recall, was the former Bucky. And as you had said, you know, I mean, we hadn't seen him in the Captain America comics except for when he was being discharged. So now we get a little bit more of this backstory, so a little bit more of a retcon. And so he wants to be more aggressive in pushing for better assignments. So soon, Jeff and Fred meet with the agent Skinner, and Cap finally asks, like, why is he have been sidelined? And Fred explains that the involvement of Captain America will only escalate the dangers of crime in the streets, and it's better he's a deterrent than as a weapon. And so Captain America finds himself giving speeches in schools to children about the whole duck and cover, right? Stuff that I think when we were kids in the '70s and we were still learning about, right? It was
Sure. Yeah.
yeah. And then a report comes in of a missing child, and so Cap heads out into the night to search for this young kid. His name's Danny Katarski, and uh, and and witnesses say that he was taken by a UFO. So he contacts Agent Skinner, who disapproves of the mission until Cap mentions that a witness heard the word Vanguard. And at this, Skinner tells Cap to make every effort to find the boy. So in a nearby cemetery, Cap discovers a pair of costume guards outside this like tomb entrance, and he overpowers them pretty easily. And he enters and he discovers there's a secret lab with a flying saucer, and so he ends up rescuing Danny. And there's also in these other glass cases, there's looks like aliens, different types of creatures in there. Um, but like I said, he rescues Danny, and they escape. And lo and behold, they get outside, and who's waiting for them? But Fred Davis. And so, a little after that, Jeff meets with Skinner and Fred, who tell him that Vanguard is a secret government program and one that it's above his pay grade. So Skinner makes it clear that he has never trusted Jeff, and even less now that Mary Morgan is suspected of being a communist spy. So Jeff defends Mary, but Skinner reveals that Cap will be sent to the front lines in Korea to inspire the troops, but you know, probably he's going to end up dying, right, in some sort of suicide mission. But Cap switches off the recorder to speak off the record, and he knows that Skinner encouraged him to investigate Vanguard in hopes of creating a problem for the rival agency, so that he, uh, basically Skinner, could come in and clean it up to look like a hero. And then, of course, meanwhile, Cap would be shipped off to Korea and, probably a quick death. So Cap then reveals that he's recorded this off the record discussion and threatens to report Skinner to his boss, none other than J. Edgar Hoover, for disloyalty. So Skinner realizes that he's in a bad situation. He's been caught. So he asks Cap, what will it take for his silence? And basically, Jeff Mace um, has a couple of different things that he asks for. So he realizes where Betsy Ross is in her new assignment. So he asks that he gets a chance to reconnect with Mary. So he actually ends up resigning as Captain America, and then he and Betsy connect. They continue with their romantic relationship. They end up getting married. She becomes a teacher while he takes over a small town newspaper, and they live the American dream, becoming part of a small, close knit community and looking out for their fellow citizens. Later, as they discuss the new commie smashing Captain America, and who's that, Bob?
That would be William Burnside.
Yeah. Jeff reveals that he chose to move on because he learned you can't always defeat bullies with your fists. And as a newsman, he has the opportunity to oppose Joe McCarthy and the other red baiters to show the hope and promise that is America. And he stands up for what he believes is best for the country, and that is what makes him a patriot.
And scene.
Yep. All right, Bob. So we just went fairly quickly through the four issues. What was your overall thoughts?
Oh my gosh. We didn't do it justice, Rick. And I think anybody who is the least bit interested and hasn't read this yet, you got to pick up these four issues because it is glorious looking, but the story is also so well written, and there's a lot of twists and turns. There's a lot of detail, a lot of historical, little factoids in this thing, like the
Oh,
blue
Easter
ticket
eggs.
and
Yeah.
little Easter eggs like that from history, but also from the golden age stories as well. So do yourself a favor, give yourself that treat, pick up the story if you haven't read it, because it's well worth it.
I agree. I agree. All right, Bob, we uh, have, we're going to do a little bit of our normal recap here as far as favorite panels. Actually, I go first. All right, Bob.
All
So
right.
I'm going to go. My favorite panel was the first issue, and it was the last page.
Okay, all right. Oh.
So it's the last page, and this was when he was being asked to be the new Captain America, and so he was wearing the Captain America uniform because he put it on after William Naslin, and he he's sitting there, and then he stands up, and he takes off his jacket that was covering him up, and he's holding the shield, and he looks at them, and he says, "That would be an honor." And you know what? I love that. Right? I think that sums up Jeff Mace uh, here. With the taking on the heavy burden of being Captain America and being that symbol, and he doesn't shy away from that and says that would be an honor. And I like the way uh, the art's drawn here as well.
Yeah, good choice. Good choice, Rick. That was actually what I had picked to go on my T-shirt. So
Oh,
I definitely get the attraction of that page, and he's got great pouches.
it does.
So I like pouches. So
You do.
I think for me, I got to go with I'm working off the trade pub. So but it is around page 15 or so, and in the trade pub. I mean, it's that introduction, June and beyond. Okay, Axis, here comes the Liberty Legion.
Hmm.
And it's got all of the Liberty Legion characters illustrated with loving detail, and I just love that story from Marvel Premiere, and then sort of carried over into the annual, the 2-in-1 annual with the Thing. I love the concept of the Liberty Legion. I wish we had seen more of them, but I love that it was treated with such respect and love in this issue for many pages. But this is the first time that we see the Liberty Legion together. So this has got to be my favorite panel.
Very cool. I like that. All right. So what are you going to put on a t-shirt?
Well, I think I'm going to go with the cover of issue 2. So
Really interesting.
yeah, it just speaks to me. Cap cradling Cap's body, and it says something about what it means to be Captain America, right? You step into the breach. Steve Rogers was the first, and then as we learned in what of number 4, when he fell, another stepped in, and when he fell, another stepped in, and on and on and on. So that says something about the mantle itself. So I think I'd like to have that on a shirt.
Okay. That's pretty
Yeah,
cool.
yeah. How about yourself?
All right. So my going on a t-shirt is going to be on issue 3, and it was the I don't know what page it is. I think it may be 14 or something. But it was when he was battling Lavender,
Ooh,
And
yeah.
there's a panel at the bottom where he's got his right fist cocked and his left
Yeah.
one forward,
Right.
and he says, "You just keep making this easier and easier."
Yeah.
And and you know, just take that panel out of context and just
Right.
put it on a T-shirt,
Slap it on a t-shirt.
right? Like
Yeah.
I think, like you don't have to. I mean that panel could work for anything,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
And so just cap punching somebody going, "You're just making this easier and easier." I like that. I'm putting that on a T-shirt.
All right, good choice. Good choice. How about your time capsule?
So for my time capsule, I'm going to issue 2. And there's a page towards the end. I don't know if it's like page 20 or whatever, but it's, remember when I was talking about like there was this 4 panels? It was like February 47, August of 47, December 47, April of 48, and it was basically taking the different stories that were happening in the golden age and just kind of referencing those. um, yeah, I think that's going in my time capsule because it definitely is a nice tribute to the golden age, but bringing it modern with some of the commentary that was going on for each one of those individual issues.
Nice. I like that. Yeah.
How about you? What's going in your
Yeah.
time
Well, I
capsule?
yeah, well, I'm gonna go historical, right? Because we talked about it, but we sort of glossed by it. But his friend Jake Casey committed suicide because he got a blue discharge, which was a discharge at that time for being a homosexual. So this was something that was introduced in 1916 in the military and persisted until 1947, but it was sort of a gray zone between honorable and dishonorable discharge. So right in the middle. But if you got that, basically, as it explained in the story, you were unemployable, right? Because people knew what it was and didn't want to hire you, and it sort of left you without many options. So, like I said, it was finally gotten away with in 1947, but it is a historical callback to something that happened. Guy went off to war,
Mm,
served honorably, a good guy, but he came back with no options and a dead end ahead of him because of this characterization of discharge. So one of those things that should remain in our rear view mirror, and hopefully it will.
yeah, yeah. Well, it's a good call out by you. All right, Bob. Well, I gotta say, this was a really interesting story. I know it's been on your bucket list for a few years to cover it here on the podcast, so I'm happy that we were finally able to get to it. I really did like the deep dive on Jeff Mace's character and a lot of the supporting characters as well. I've never been one who is really um, knowledgeable about Golden Age, but it was able, was able to kind of do a little due diligence on some of this stuff just to see how it all played together. And I can't wait to talk to Karl next episode to ask him about some of his inspiration for this and research that he did for this. So thank you for suggesting this story.
Yeah, and as we sort of hinted at the beginning, it does tie up some loose ends with Betsy Ross, right? Because she showed up in Captain America Comics #1 and had appearances in many, many, many issues of Captain America Comics, and some of the Captain America stories that appeared in other books as well, other titles as well. And so, it's somebody that we don't see a lot of in the modern age. She's only appeared a handful of times in the modern age, and you got to wonder, like, whatever happened to her?
Yeah.
For somebody who is so important to the Captain America mythos in the 40s and 50s. And so this story wraps up her story for us and tells us what happened to her.
Yep. Yeah, we'll have to talk more about that with Karl next episode. In addition to the Patriot, he also, as you mentioned, wrote. He was a writer and artist for the 1940s newspaper strip, which was a 3 issue miniseries that basically was like the forgotten Captain America newspaper strip. So he wrote it as if it was done during the 1940s. So that's a cool one to talk about. And also, I don't know if people remember this, but he was the inker on the Captain America Man Out of Time. miniseries.
That's right. Yeah.
We've got a lot of Cap stuff to talk with him, but come back for that next episode. So, Bob, as always, it's been a lot of fun wrapping Cap with you.
It has. It has, Rick. Thanks for a wonderful time. I can't wait till next week.
All right, he's Bob Lucius. I'm Rick Verbanis. And you, if you don't mind, please rate, review, and subscribe wherever you listen. And if you're on YouTube right now, give us that thumbs up. We appreciate that. If you're listening on Apple, please give us a 5-star review. If you're on any other platform, we'd love hearing your comments, whether that's Facebook or YouTube. So please make sure you continue to do that. And we, as always, appreciate you listening to another episode of the Captain America Comic Book Fans Podcast.